My name is Victor. I'm a compulsive eater. Weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. Committed to a sponsor. Weigh and measure without exception. Abstinence is the most important thing in my life. My abstinence date is April 18th, 2001. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be abstinent today. I think without abstinence, I'd be dead. Truly, either by health reasons or I would have checked out by now, because drugs weren't working, food wasn't working. I'm a very damaged person, and I think a lot of us, I guess I can only speak from my experience, but I think the people I've worked with, we kind of all just want to get right with the world. We're not trying to, we're just trying to get right, and be able to live life on its own terms. And that was my whole thing, growing up through life. That's all I really wanted, was to just have some peace without being afraid of everything, without being angry at everyone, being frustrated with life. And so, I did the only thing that made sense to me, and that was to eat. And because it gave me that sense of ease and comfort, I think that, I didn't really think about it until, how much I used it, until I really, really started using it, because, until I realized I was using food, of course I was using food for the longest time. I got some fat pictures that I can show you. This is like, let me see if I can. Yeah, sort of. There we go. That was like 3rd grade, I think. Yeah, there we go. And then that was like, I was like 17, sitting on my bed. Whoa. I was a big old boy. And whoop. And this one's not a very good, well, keeps going. That was taken from a video of another friend. Dig my vest, my battle jacket. And then this was probably taken at a NA meeting, I think. And that's probably, I was in my 40s, maybe. No, I didn't have my throat down. Maybe late 30s, something like that. Yeah, it had to be late 30s because I was in 40s. Yeah.
31.
Yeah, that's right. So it had to be late 20s. Yeah. I can't remember. Anyway, so, I kind of qualify. So I had the outer manifestation, as they say on the gray sheet. So, and then there was times where I was at a normal weight, but I never thought I was at a normal weight. I never thought, because I always had that image of me being big, there were times where, I looked like a normal person. But I would exercise, like, out of, like, going nonstop on my bicycle for hundreds of miles, just to, like, if I binged, that's what I would do, is go riding. And that was the only thing that made me feel like okay in the brain, and, it was like, it's the only thing that really shut food is the only thing that really shut things off, you know. Um, I I come from a, you know, so sometimes I'm like, I hear about people who talk about their families and how close they were and how they, went on family vacations and whatnot. And I don't, I don't really remember much of that, both my parents have passed away, and they, you know, I'm, I don't know, I guess it's one of those things that now I still have, there's still resentments, there's still resentments I have. I, and that's what the steps are all about, you know. Um, but, that I was taught about being afraid of everything, and not relying on uh, a higher power from my parents, because they had no faith. So, and then they were taught that too. So it's kind of a cycle, you know. Um, and so I learned I had financial insecurity, when I was a kid. My dad used to he was so drastic half the time. Like, we'd be driving and he'd like make a wrong turn somewhere and he'd be like, "Oh, we're lost. We're never getting home." And, I'm in second grade. I'm freaking out. "What do you mean never going home?" And so I learned how to remember which way. I have an awesome sense of direction now, because if he turned wrong, I would say, all we have to do is go down here, turn back that way, and we're on our way home. That's all we have to do, you know? And, because I was afraid I was never going to go home, and it was always like, always, never, and, and and so, I lived with these like drastic things, and and so living with that fear, I did a lot of things um to that I thought what I was protecting myself with, you know. um I would I I wouldn't I could take a beating and not cry, because that was showing weakness. And, that in turn turned itself into, like, when I go to school, I was I was not the cool kid for sure. But I learned, and then when they started, kids are cruel. When they started beating up on me, I learned how to take a beating, and then they stopped doing it. And it wasn't, and I wasn't until I started wrestling that I learned how to start controlling my weight. Because in wrestling, you do all kinds of, you have to make weight in your weight class, so you try to make weight at a lower weight, so that when you weigh in, right after weigh in, you eat a bunch of food so you can gain a lot of weight, like, right away. And so you starve yourself, basically. Don't eat anything, don't drink anything, work out with garbage bags on so you can just sweat your ass off, and then weigh in, and then eat as much as you can, and then so you're heavier than your opponent when you wrestle. So, you know, needless to say, it's kind of a crazy way to do things. But so I got used to doing exercise a lot, and But when we moved down to Texas, I lived in Wisconsin for a number of years, um, and we moved down here to Texas. I I started doing drugs in high school. I got introduced to the pharmaceuticals, and that helped my brain for a long time until it stopped working. And I had a ritual. You know, I'd go get this certain drug, and then I'd go down to this certain food shop, get my fix there with my Diet Coke, because you know, trying to watch my weight, got to have my Diet Coke. I come in, prepare, get high, eat this wonderful thing, and that was my ritual. And that worked for a long time. But you know, eventually, it's like I never got, I never got, I never lost friends from using their drugs, but I did get kicked out of the apartment that I was living in because I ate all their food. So that tells you one thing. They didn't care that I was using their drugs. They cared because I ate all the food. And and they were like, "You can't live here anymore. You just ate all the food." And so, um, you know, it was like, you know, that's kind of the moral of the story there. Um, but anyway, you know, I found Gray Sheet um, when I first started going out with the missus here. Well, it was before we going out. She came into the restaurant. So I worked with, I was a chef for a number of years. That tells you something, you know. I was like a drug dealer, you know. and and so she came into the restaurant I was working at with the fellowship of people that were going to, it was in Narcotics Anonymous. And that's another thing. I didn't know anything about the 12 steps. So when these guys come in and they were talking about narcotics, I thought they were like pro narcotics or something like that. They were like, yeah, we do narcotics, you know? And so, you know, but they came in and she was with them and I go, "Hey, can I make you something?" She goes, "No, I'm doing this thing called Gray Sheet." And she explained it to me and I was just like, okay, whatever. And so, you know, I heard about it at a young age, and eventually we started going out and we got married and we were like, you know, Sid and Nancy. It was just like it was on. You know, we both have our sides of the bed with our nightstands full of food. You know, wake up with, you know, food all over you, orange dust. You know, and so um, you know, it was like that. And there are so many years that I don't really remember much because I was just eating so much just to check out. And finally, you know, it 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 was like I was beaten to a state of reasonableness, and I was finally ready to do whatever it took to stay abstinent. And luckily, we had a strong Gray Sheet community here for in Austin. It was the person that originally brought it here was from up in Cambridge. So when they came down, they brought it here. But then it kind of got little flaky, you know. People started making exceptions, and so you know, and I didn't really notice it until I went to a retreat, Gray Sheet retreat in Kansas, and that kind of changed my whole outlook on, you know, what abstinence was all about. And you know, and so once I got abstinent, um, the food was down. That's when the insanity started kicking in again. That's when I was just like, I am insane. I do not know how to live life. And what this, you know, the big book tells us that, um, if you honestly want to, when you find you can't quit entirely, or when eating you have little control over the amount you take, you probably are a compulsive eater. If that is the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. When I first heard that, I was just like, I don't know about that. Now, growing up, I thought I could be a priest when I was like really, really young. I was like, I can be a priest. And if, because that's the closest you can be to like God.
That's
And
time.
maybe I'll,
That's time.
time done. All
Yeah,
right.
not done, but you can wrap it up.
All right. Thanks.
15 minutes. That was 15 minutes. I don't know if you have 20.
Um, and so, it took working the steps and finding spiritual experience that, um, I don't know what that was, but anyway, um, I think that I want to leave with this, and then I'll shut up. It's in the uh, chapter 2, We Agnostics. Um, Actually, we are fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Deep down inside us. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God is a part of our makeup. It's part of us, just as much as feeling we had for a friend. We found the great reality deep down within us. And so for me, that's where I found my higher power, is deep down within me. And that's only through working the steps. I highly recommend working an AWOL. I'm starting one next week, and we're working the steps. Work them fast, work them often. And that's all I got.